Okay. So how I started, how I started with Halfland is I was working for Julie Taymor in New York. I was working on an opera that she was producing, and we finished early. And they generously said to all the craftspeople, "Okay, everyone, we've got this space until the end of the month. Work on your own projects." And everyone went, "Huh," and I didn't have anything. And then this occurred to me, and it's been 17 years since that time, and most of those 17 years is me just moving the cement molds from house to house as I've moved over the last 17 years. But I bought everything for the whole production while I was still living in New York, and I knew exactly from the beginning what it was going to be, and it's just been collecting reference material as I see it. It's kind of like I liken the whole process to the way a whale eats, where they just go through the ocean and what comes to them is filtered through, and that's what they utilize. That's how I've collected all the reference images through the years. It's just like, that's Halfland, and I just keep that for reference. It was just before, if you recall back, 1993, it was just before Nightmare Before Christmas was released in the theaters. And I knew I wanted this story, and I don't know how it first occurred to me to make it stop motion as an art medium. But I do remember the moment where it was like you were just talking about how stop motion involves all skills of art. And I knew what I loved to do. I knew I loved to make little things. I knew I loved detail, and I knew I had a story vision and things I was imagining that I wanted to make real somehow. So I knew all of that, and then when I somehow connected the dots to stop motion, it was the line that came from deep inside of me was, "This is my art medium of choice." That was my moment. It was like, it's on. And it's always going to be stop motion. And it's just, that's been my focus. I do other things as creatively inspired, but I direct and funnel all my creative energy into this project. And it's like, gives a context, a place for that. And it's been really powerful. Oh, I'm 17 years in and 96% done with the pre-production. And I'm very clear about the entire process of puppet, what's to be done for the puppet making. And being as this has gone on already for me about 1,000 times longer than I could have conceived of, being as that's the case, I suspect it'll go on much longer. Although what's different now than it was 17 years ago is I'm no longer procrastinating. I'm taking action, I'm moving forward, I'm able to move forward. Something has shifted in me through those years. I'm a different person now than I was, and I never considered myself patient or tenacious or determined in a personality way, but I have all of that now, especially concerning this.
That's great.
So it's really changed. Yeah. And unexpectedly, I don't know if it was me getting to that place and then the support appearing or the other way around, but out of the blue, without me doing any kind of thing about promoting it, there's been tremendous support. People coming in, volunteering. There's people that come over a few times a week and pitch in and just help, and it keeps me going when I might drift off to do other things or be too tired or. It keeps me moving this forward, and it really is. There's a character in the film, a little background character, which is half tortoise, half hare. It's a white hare with a tortoise shell, like a horse saddle. And it really is, I'm finding out, the way to succeed with this project for me is the tortoise approach. Just step it forward, keep it going, keep it moving, and that's how I'm seeing results. I had been working so long alone. I mean, putting up the sky on the set was ridiculous. It took me 2 months, and would have gone by in a day if someone had been helping me. But it was me with a 10-foot pole with a glove on the end to hoist up the sky and then run over and pull it, try and make it like a drum taut. It was insane. And painting, it was so, that gave me reference for it. It's been, the whole film had been that for so long. And now with people helping, there is kind of a pleasure in sharing it, and I feel really there is that dimension of teaching. I have one person that comes, I'm teaching her mold making. She wanted to make a puppet for the film. Absolutely. So I'm teaching her what I learned from working on the Tamor productions, that I learned from Nelson Lowry, and I don't know if he subsequently went into stop motion too. He was art director on Corpse Bride, Nelson. But I learned mold making in New York from him while we were working on the operas, and so I'm just showing that to Sorrel, who comes here, and there is something so gratifying teaching what we know. This is I have one friend who when he first came over, he's a photographer for Annie, and he saw all my collages on all my walls. He asked me if I'd ever seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, which is about a crazy person that does this. So occasionally I look at all of this and I go, that's pretty crazy. And so I have to look at that objectively and wonder about myself. And usually that lasts for about 6 minutes, and then I just get on with the fun. Because I don't even care. It's like, as long, I call it riding the tiger. As long as I'm directing the madness, then it's fine. As long as I don't fall off and get eaten, then it's fine. So far I'm riding the tiger. All right, so the wall is reference. I kept saving all of these reference materials as they occurred to me coming across my path as what I wanted to make for the film, and I would see something in a magazine or online or in a book, and I would see it and I would cut it out brutally, so I'm no respecter of things, including books. And I would collect them in folders and envelopes for years, and then finally pasted them all down with wallpaper paste onto big sheets. And then that wasn't enough. I had to put the sheets out where I could see them all. And when I do, ultimately, I'm hoping to have an exhibit for Halfland when the film is done with all the sets and props and materials. I'm hoping to have some of this on display so people can come and see, what my reference. They might find it interesting. But anyway, every sheet is a different character or aspect of the film that I need to refer to so I can reconnect to what I'm trying to make. And it's completely inspiring. Like, I can give you a concrete example. Is like, let's say I have a character that's a Mothman, and there's something that developed on the fly in the film where he's carrying a lantern of the moon, which is actually under construction right here. So this will be a moon lantern when it's all done, with this digitally superimposed on it at times. So you're never, in Halfland, you're never sure if things are one thing or another. So this is a moon lantern, Chinese lantern. Anyway, the Mothman will carry behind a grove of bamboo this lantern and get some fantastically beautiful illumination as it moves, and you get glimpses of the puppet. God knows what year. This could have been 12 years ago. I found this book on butterflies, and it had some outrageously beautiful close-up shots of various butterflies. So I pulled the pages out, as I do, for the Luna moth, and so this gives me so much inspiration. This is exactly how this wall works. So I'm looking at the butterfly wing, and I'm seeing these, I'm calling them ribs, and I'm thinking that has to be actually in the structure of the puppet. It can't, for me, it just can't be painted on. It has to be dimensional. So I played with a lot of different things, and I ended up using wire on silk that would then be painted with phosphorescent paint and textured in this fuzz way with flocking or cut hairs from fur. And so that'll give me the transition from the human back into the wing. So that's an example of how I use the wall to actually inspire how to make a facsimile for the film. I've always loved folktales, and I have I've read dozens and dozens of volumes of folktales from around the world, and Halfland is just an original folktale. And it started because when Michael Curry said to everyone, okay, everyone work on your project, the first thing that occurred to me was a beautiful mermaid, which is that board right there. But not just any mermaid, because it seemed to me, old hat, that they're always white-skinned, long hair, beautiful. I wanted something different, so this is a black mermaid, but just with a beautiful kind of coloration. You can see the swatches of color. And so I started sculpting the mermaid. And then I thought to myself, well, why is it always just a mermaid where you have a woman from here and a fish from there? Why is that? Then the crow woman occurred to me. Woman this way, crow this way. And then all the characters just started flooding in. So everything became Halfland. Okay, so I have to tell you. I have to give you one bit of context.
Okay. So how'd you do this?
Okay, so when I started Halfland, there was no internet, no digital photography, no stop motion animation software available unless you had $100,000 for a suite somewhere. So that's the good news about it taking so long, is all of that has happened. So one of the best things that has happened because of the internet is the blog and the people reading the blog from all over the world. Incredible people, talented people, friends, deep friends. Anyway, I opened up one scene of Halfland to everyone and said, make a fish for the underwater scene, and they did. I don't know if I should turn this for you to see.
There we go.
But this represents all the fish that have come in so far from all over the world. We have Nick Hilligoss's piano tuna from Australia and his quadrupeds, and a peanut butter and jellyfish, which made me laugh out loud, from Mike Latondra. And I mean, just you name it, Sweden, Canada, Italy, children, professionals. I mean, to me, this thrills me that everyone wanted to be part of a scene, and it just thrills me to know it. I'm going to shoot each thing separately and composite, so I don't go, so I'm not animating a 1,000 legs and fins, but just take each one as its own little showcase and then composite all together on the set. Sure. This is another context for Halfland, is that I'm not trying to do things properly. I'm trying to get my vision made however I can by the means that I have. So I'm going to somehow get a copy of After Effects, and I'm very deep. I've been doing graphic design and production for 25 years, so I'm deep into Adobe product. So I'm figuring there should be some kind of basis for me to learn it. But it's like, it'll be, you may agree with this, but I feel that art isn't the tools. It's the artist that uses the tools to make their art. And so for me, the computer is just another tool that we make our art, our fine art with. And I certainly know that I've gotten results in Photoshop that for me evoke a fine art feel. It's a tool. It's a tool. And so, yes, so After Effects for compositing the underwater scene. This is from Peggy Fussell in Maryland. She had made a collage of hydrangea and leaves, hydrangea petals and leaves, and then she took a photograph of that collage she made and transferred it onto canvas, and then cut the canvas out and made it into a fish puppet with wire inside for animating. So that's just going to be another spectacular art piece.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful, right? Oh, Peggy, that's not all Peggy did. She and this is another phenomenon of Halfland. People make this a tourist stop when they travel to LA.
Oh, wow.
I've had Peggy, she was having a family trip out here and she wanted to visit Halfland. So of course, what did I do? I made her draw the paper forward. She's an illustrator by profession. So I laid this whole front area out with cardboard and had her draw beautiful trees and that we cut out and painted, and now they're standing. They'll be the proscenium for the set. They'll open and frame.
That's great.
Yeah. So again, utilizing who comes by, Oh, and I had a good friend's niece who was 14, was coming to LA, and my friend offered her to entertain her on the trip. Offered her a list of 10 tourist destinations, and the only one she wanted to do was Halfland, and she did it twice. She came twice on her stay.
Oh, wow.
And that was Mariah, and she helped me build a water wheel that runs the electricity for the bug party lanterns.
Oh, that's cool.
So I mean, it's just become and every Friday evening here is open house. So people come and they do their own art, or if they're sensitive enough, they get a Halfland task and work on Halfland. We have food, we laugh, some people date. It's just a great LA scene. I love the regularity. Every Friday, wherever they are, whatever they're doing, they come by.
So you're part of the underground.
I didn't know there was one.
Apparently there is.
Okay, then yes. I'm definitely part of the underground. I bought huge panels of cardboard and I kind of made them like a background for the set. And I painted them blue sky, with a gradient for distance, and then a horizon line with the ocean at the bottom. And then in front of that, I strung a painted layer of plastic drop cloth as tightly as I could. And there'll be trees here to help with that, so it'll go more taut than it is right now. It's a bit slack at the moment. But the idea is that what was really cool, this was the painstaking sky process I mentioned to you before. What's cool about it is when I finally got it installed and I took test shots of the set against it, even rudimentarily, roughly lit, people thought I had taken the set outside. So it works. And what's really cool is because the cottage has sky above, I'll be, and it's an open roof, I'll be needing to shoot straight up, and it, again, so you have the close-up of the branches with the leaves, and then beyond that, the sky going up forever with clouds painted on the ceiling. And it really is remarkably effective. I was really surprised how natural it looks. So the main character is a character that represents wisdom. There's a lot of allegory in this folktale. Beside everything being half of something else, she, for me, is a part of me, really. They're all part of me in a way. But she, for me, is that kind of wise. There's no dialogue in the film, so it's all just conveyed through pantomime, like a ballet. And there'll be an accompanying storybook with it too, hard copy with beautiful illustrated photographs from stills from the film. That's the plan. And but the character, she's half goat, so she's old wise woman waist up, and from waist down she has goat legs and hooves. And there's a very cool reveal for that, as there's a kind of, I'll describe just the opening shot because it kind of says a lot about how the film will go. There's 2 different scales on this set, actually 3 different scales of size of worlds. There's a very minute scale, which is, there's a little house in the roots, which we can swing around and look at later. A little tiny, tiny scale, very detailed, that's a little mouse. And then there's this scale, which is the main Halfland scale, and then there's a little patch of macro, large scale with big blades of grass where we can get close up on tiny things, kind of an illusion, multi-purpose set. Well, the opening sequence after you come into Halfland is you're following the mouse to his little house, and so it's very tight frame on the mouse. So you think, when you first see Halfland in the film, you'll think, I want you to think, that the scale is that small, that normal stop motion tiny scale. Then, thanks to Dick Kanashiro's MoCo offer, we're gonna move that camera, swing it back. As you hear the sound of main character Rana encouraging the mouse to her. So you hear that off camera, and then you swing around to see her, and you see this old woman beckoning the mouse to come to her. Well, you swing back a bit further, you see the full scale of the main cottage and the main landscape, and you also notice that as she's kneeling, you see that she's got hooves. So it's like, okay, where are we? So that kind of shift of scale, I want it to be mind-blowing. That's my hope. The rest of it is basically vignettes of nature in Halfland. Little funny things happen. There's a bit of wit through it, I hope. Bugs having a party at night on the Mushroom Cafe, which is a spontaneous development. Birds in hats fighting over their chapeaux for looking at themselves in the mirror, and then a hat falling on the sleeping cat underneath. Little running jokes throughout. But mostly it's just that feeling one gets, and a lot of people who read the blog say they want to come and live in Halfland. And it's just because, why? Because it's that calm, connected place to nature. It's a retreat in a way, where the kettle goes on, you have the tea, you have the soup, you take a nap, slumber, things are at peace. And I think that's what's so appealing about it to me. This is the main set because at least I had enough wherewithal to know to only make one set. But as I got into it, I realized that it's actually more than one set because there's different regions and microclimates as we go around it. Behind the cottage, down from the kitchen in the cottage, is a little pond where the time frog lives. And what's interesting about that is that the bottom of the set is open underneath the pond, and I've attached green mossy fabric in kind of folds that you can reach up and put the camera up through. And then layers of tulle, which is like a sheer mesh fabric in blue, and then this top surface is cut and cemented on to be taut garment bag. Sorry about that, my husband. You didn't need that garment bag anymore. So, which gives this amazing kind of glass-like water surface feel. And if you make concentric rings out of clear glue or something like that, and then animate them in sequence, you can actually make it look like ripples falling away in the surface of the water. So the pond becomes its own environment, its own mini set within the larger set. And what's so fabulous, and this is one of the organic things that happens from making the film, is I want to shoot, how I want to reveal the time frog is I want to show off that belly. So he'll be forearms on the shore of the pond, sitting comfortably on a lily pad or something, and then the belly will be visible from underneath through the water. And so it'll be illuminated with its own little mini lights inside. So you'll have the clockworks, you'll get the drill, and then you'll come out of the water and see him from above with the clockworks working. So you see both facets of that character as you're just gliding by. In Halfland, the camera is the audience point of view. So as the camera moves across and through and in and out of Halfland, that's how the audience is discovering it, as if you were visiting here yourself. The mouse's house is there because this is the answer tree. And the answer tree, you notice the hollow in the tree is a little bit suggestive of an ear. And that's because creatures from all over Halfland come to ask their questions of the great, wise answer tree, which every answer to every question is provided. You come to the tree, whisper your question privately to the tree. The question is heard down deep in the roots where the mouse lives. He hears the answer, and he has glasses, little tiny micro glasses, a little quill and scrolls and ink, and he'll write down the answer for you on a root. I haven't decided yet, a root or a pod of some kind, a seed of some kind, and then it's planted, and you have to wait for the leaf to grow out with your answer written on it to answer your question. And of course, by then you don't care anymore, and that's really just the point, that at a certain point all of our questions don't matter, really. So that's the mouse house scale that I've described to you, the opening shot where you swing out rather rapidly and then see the larger scale, which should be, and I want to do tilt shift for the wide angle shot of the set. I want to do tilt shift so it looks miniature. So I'm really playing with perception. It's like I made it large, but I want it to look as though it was small because I'm hoping it will look as if it was too small to be made by hand. And so therefore it must be real. So then you come across, this was an organic development that went out of hand. This will be its own little children's book. So while we were planting the set, we decided it needed mushrooms, right? Okay, but it's Halfland, so you can't just have normal mushrooms. You have to have mushrooms that are plaid. And so I raided the house of every plaid fabric, including my husband's pajamas, and I took the inside of his pocket, and he went to put his hand in his pocket, and there was no pocket anymore. Sorry about that, dear. Sacrifice is patron of the art. Anyway, I painted them all red, and so they would look like that kind of mushroom that they look like. And then, of course, they look like tablecloths in a cafe. So then that started me thinking, well, they need little teacups and plates for the cafe tables. And so I made, out of paper, little teacups and plates for the spots on the mushrooms that are also the cafe. So who should come? Insects, of course. And so this becomes the party spot for the insect cafe. And I've built 10 insects. I may stop there, but they're just a riot because they're drab, unattractive insects, but they have their party duds on. So they're wearing little petals or little sparkly things, whatever they have for party wear for bugs. And this one has a little striped straw, and he'll sip nectar out of the teacup, like so. And there's inside, under the fabric is a little strip of metal, and there'll be magnets in the bugs, so they'll stay on. I'll try this one, it'll be easier. So the magnets will pop to the metal so that the bugs can, it'll be very limited moment of animation, just where you get the idea that they're having a party. And of course, this one is just a little in between tiny strands, and each one of these lanterns that look like crude bugs, like the bugs in the movie made these lantern bugs, they light up as well. But Dick Kaneshiro has to come over and help me solder the connection that broke for that to work. That was all. I knew that was always a danger. And then it goes deeper detail than that. I made, on some of the mushrooms, I made little porches, little red doors with little heads of pins as the brass doorknobs, and little stone pathways and little geraniums leading to their doorway. So it's kind of this miniature world all its own. And during the day, it'll be shot twice. Halfland will be shot during the day and at night, because there's such different lighting effects possible. So during the day, these party lights won't be here. It'll just look like a stand of mushrooms. But then at night, you'll come back and hear music and see the cafe filled with bugs having a party, including crickets delivering cupcakes hanging from the chandelier, And it just went out of hand and became its own little storybook. So what we're doing right now is we're starting to install the roof on the cottage, and when that's done, we'll extend it out, and this will become the porch. And everything in Halfland is handmade, just about everything. If there is something that can fit for the film that's store-bought, I will use it, but usually modifying it so that it fits into the world. So everything is handmade, including this barrel. And the reason why I took the time and trouble to make something like this prop is because it actually has an important role in the film. Because when the mermaid comes down the stream to visit her good friend who lives in the cottage, how does she collect her from the stream? She'll grab the barrel from the porch under her arm, come down the pathway from her porch, lean over into the stream, and put her mermaid friend in the barrel so that she can stay in water while she visits. This is something that they do apparently all the time, because the cottage is filled with little gifts from the sea, little starfish and shells here and there. So this is not the first visit. So I spent a lot. The first thing I made for Halfland was the broom at the hearth. And I was living in New York, and we had a fireplace in the home, and there was a little fireplace hearth broom there, and I just replicated it exactly, including stitching with red threads the bristles. I actually cut, I'm ruthless. I cut that broom and got the bristles with the soot stain on them, and that was the first thing. And that's why Halfland is the size that it is, because that broom had this scale, and so then everything was this scale. And then the next thing I made was an apple. And because I made the apple the size it did, we have a 26-foot set. If I had made the apple half its size, we'd be talking on a tabletop right now. Okay, so this is where I stand right now in terms of my plan for a lot of the major puppets in the film. So when I was in New York, I sculpted the time frog. There's a little background character of a frog in a pond where one of the eyes is a clock, and it's actually the source of, it's symbolic of time itself. So I sculpted the creature. This is a silicone mold made from that sculpture. And I wanted to do a latex, this is how I developed. I wanted to do a latex slush mold in it. So I took my latex, poured it in, put my two halves together, do what you're supposed to do, and let it cure, right? And I noticed it wasn't curing from the funnel there, and so I rigged a fan and directed air flow to after a week, nothing. It wasn't the latex wasn't going off as if it was still in the jar. Wasn't enough airflow. So that was a fail, epic fail. So, and I had been doing paper mache on the whole set, and I happened to love the feeling of sculpting with my hands and creating with paper mache. So put the two together, you get latex mache. So what I did was I took Japanese rice paper because of its tensile strength and its ability to not fall apart when wet, tear edges so it blends. And I took latex instead of starch or other art paste and basically did the paper mache technique into the mold itself, into the two halves of the mold as thickly with total control. Now, stop motionists will relate to this. The control this gave me was so perfect because I could put it where I wanted and have it as thick as I wanted and as durable as I wanted. And not for nothing, it gave this fantastic paper finish, which works for the film, for me. So I made it in two halves, and I was able to then, to very easily for me, lay my wire armature inside and backfill with more latex and do it. So anyway, long story short, this is kind of the Time Frog puppet. It's still in process. This is, of course, a hot water bottle rubber cut into tongue with wire in between, so that'll unfurl nicely at the right time. And for the clock, this took me forever because I wanted to animate. I had these antique pocket watch hands, very filigree, very, very fine crafted hands for the Time Frog. And so, but I didn't want it to be rickety as time went around. I wanted a nice smooth mechanism. I had to rig something, and it does work very smoothly. It works as smoothly as if it were a real clock. If you see how smoothly that mechanism is for animating, it's going to be it won't jiggle at all. I had to take everything apart in the house. I don't know how long I looked through everything. I finally, and because I wanted to use those clock hands, and they had inner and outer dimensions to their circles. They were different. It was like that. So I finally took apart pens and took little plastic pieces and finally did that. And there's no language. There's no written language or numbers in Halfland. So I didn't want to have numbers on the clock face. So what I did was I took an actual watch part, a back of a watch, and took a nail set and hammered dots, bumps to kind of suggest numbering there. So that's the timer, and then there'll be glass eye over it, so you look through and kind of get this fantastic, kind of like the other eye gets. And I'll be able to finish the surface. I'm building this out to fit the glass, and I'll be able to finish the surface any way I like. So the inside of the Time Frog is fun too, I think. What happened was one of the blog readers who sent me natural materials. She lives in Georgia. Sent me natural materials. I call her a Halfland's official naturalist because she keeps sending me things. And one of the packages she sent, her family had a watch repair business of some kind. She sent me boxes of hundreds of watch parts in all sizes. So I took a few of those pieces, took them into the computer environment, and created my own watch mechanism with gears that work inside, out of paper. I hand cut it out of paper. So this whole thing is such an organic development, because what happens, what turns the clockworks? What turns the clockworks in the Time Frog that you can see through his transparent belly? Why, time flies, of course. So the frog naturally eats time flies, and they come down the esophagus. There's one right there. They land in the clockworks and just scurry around in there, and that's how we have time. Thank you. So what's cool is, on the exhibit will be this puppet planned to have the Time Frog with a light illuminating the works on the inside. And I noticed, looking through the window of his belly, that you could see around the clockworks into his interior of his body. Well, that wouldn't do. So what did I do? Made guts. Now, I skipped when they dissected frogs on science class in high school. I stayed home that day because I couldn't deal with it. But I found myself actually making frog guts to kind of frame the clockwork, so that when people at the exhibit come and peer inside, or when it is caught on camera during the animation, you'll actually feel as though the clockworks are part of his interior body as well. So he has a little heart, he has a Chanel heart, he has wax paper lungs with branches inside, and blue wool thread veining and little chenille yarn heart and veins and rubber tubing with wire inside intestines and some kind of liver organ when it'll be backlit inside the clock has watch parts floating inside seeds and other things. So that's how we have time. Time to make Halfland.